Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is afternoon in the UK on a rather dreich day in Scotland. Hello from Stirlingshire. I have three guests with me who are joining us today for Meet the Banker, an initiative that the Chartered Banker Institute has put together for membership globally, because we have 30,000 of you around the world, and we hope that this will reach into as many of you as possible. Whether you're watching it today, whether you're watching it at some point in the future, we very much welcome your company. The Chartered Banker Institute is the world's oldest banking institute. I haven't, much to the rumours, been around since the beginning. It is approaching its 150th anniversary in 2025. And something we're very proud of is the 30,000 members that we have now around the globe. So today, on Tuesday, November 17th, if you're watching and catch up, it isn't. It's a different day, and we hope you enjoy our conversation. With me are three professional bankers who have vastly different experiences of their time and careers in the profession. And I'll come to those in a moment. So I'm Bill McCall. I'm the 61st president of the Chartered Banker Institute, and delighted to be facilitating and hosting this chat with three of our highly regarded members that you'll get to know over the course of the next little while. So to Joe, to Luke, and to Lauren, our thanks for joining us, and we'll get to you in a moment. Their backgrounds are very different, as I've said, and we will explain some of that in due course. Lauren will be a familiar face to those who followed the social media side of the Chartered Banker Institute. She was a finalist in our Young Banker of the Year competition in 2019. Gave a tremendous presentation that's now being taken up in terms of its ethos by her own bank, and is a tremendous advocate for the Institute. So Lauren, welcome. How are you coping under lockdown? Because you're a sort of busy person who's always busy doing things. So how did you transition from the analog world of going into the office to the working from home mode? I'm sure those watching and listening today would be interested to hear how the first lockdown, and given you're based in England, the current second lockdown is going. Are you remaining sane?
I'd like to think so, hopefully. No one, I don't think anyone's yet tested me for it, but yeah, I do miss the office. I'm not going to lie. I really miss going to be able to see my colleagues. There is nothing better, I sometimes think, than being able to turn around and speak to the person behind you or next to you and go, I just want to brainstorm something with you. I want to understand that the idea that I've got will work, and to pull out, risks and fails. But I think what's been really useful is Zoom, or just any kind of video technology like this. Not very often I get to spend time with the president of the Chartered Bankers Institute. So to do something like this, which we probably wouldn't have done prior to lockdown, has been fantastic. And I think having that constant connection to people does keep your well-being in a really good place. I've got a really good support network at home. So my parents are very forgiving and allow me to take over their dining room as my new office. But yeah, it's been different, and there have been moments where I've kind of longed to have my desk back with my drawers and my computer, but you make do, and we do it for the right reasons. We do it to keep each other safe, and I don't think there's a better reason for it. So yeah, I've enjoyed lockdown. It's been a challenging experience, but I think you come out of it, the other side of it, much stronger, definitely.
So when you say that you're missing the contact with colleagues, is that because you feel that you are better when you're bouncing ideas, or is it simply the camaraderie or the team aspect of it? What drives that part of it?
I'm a very sociable person, so I just love the idea of being able to
know that.
Yeah. I love the idea of being able to walk across the office and talk to people. And I work in mortgages, which I imagine a lot of people know from my Young Bank of the Year competition pitch, but I work in an office that's filled with lots of people from different areas of the bank for mortgages. So we've got our BDMs that look after our broker channel, our intermediaries. We've got actual mortgage advisors that sit and support our customers. We've got mortgage customer contact that deal with our customer queries coming in. And the ability to be able to go, I'm doing this project, I want to talk to these departments and understand how I can make something work, is invaluable. Having that wealth of experience around you. It's just having to do things slightly differently. So having to kind of book some time in their diary, because I know everyone's incredibly busy right now supporting our customers. So it's just working in a slightly different way, but I think we've made it work and it's been really successful.
So Joe, if I come to you, you're a well-known advocate of the Institute, and thank you from all of us for everything you've done for it over these years. You're one of the biggest advocates to bring people into the professionalism that is required. How have you switched from the analog world? Because you were a generalist banker back in the day, but you're now a highly specialized player around leadership development. Just give the viewers and listeners an idea of how you dealt with that change. Did you miss the interaction as much as Lauren did, for instance?
I think I went through the pain of it a little while ago. Living in Durham in the northeast, I'm not local to sort of any of our major offices. So although I did travel quite a lot, when I wasn't traveling, I was based at home. So I think getting that tech set up, making sure that you've got everything running smoothly so you can just sort of get started straight away. I think we probably all struggled with that right at the beginning. Mine perhaps a couple of years ago, so not during the pandemic. But all credit to all our organisations who have been hugely supportive in making sure that we have been able to switch sort of quite easily to working from home. But I do miss the office, even though I wasn't there every day. To Lauren's point, just being able to ask a question of the open office and get lots of different ideas. It's much more formal now. You have to pick up the phone and then decide who can you approach with a different query, for example, so you don't get that informal debate going. And I think that's probably the bit that I miss most. But then again, there's other benefits as well. It's quite a privilege to be able to work from home. And I do recognise that I have got the opportunity to do that, and I've got a great place at home where I can work, and I'm not disturbed to do that. So I do value that as well. And
you're in beautiful Durham, which I suppose is great. Now the epicenter of eye testing, I understand.
Oh, is that right?
According to government advisors that we won't talk about. But you made that switch a couple of years ago to being based in an office but not close to it, working from home. Is that something you see over the last, say, 20 years or so is one of the most significant changes of working for a bank?
Absolutely, yeah. And it started not that long ago where it was, perhaps one day a week that you'd be able to work from home, but it was almost by a special negotiation. You had a set of work that you could take home because it was reading or you needed some quiet time to do that. And, even one day a week would be considered quite a large amount of time to be working from home. And it's switched now that it's the norm. Obviously, we have to at the moment. But it's just become the way that things are, and I don't see any less productivity. If anything, I'm convinced everybody is just as engaged as whatever they were. So yeah, I think it has been a huge shift, but for positive reasons as well.
So the productivity point is really well made, because my observation, and I wonder if both Lauren and Luke would agree, is that people are working very hard. I mean, I get the sense that the banking profession is in demand. There's a lot going on. Yet there are some pockets, and we saw government talk about get people back to the office and all that sort of stuff. An observation we've made as an institute, and we have virtually a digital organization these days with membership everywhere, is that productivity is up if you just trust people. And do the job the best. Now, look, you've got changed circumstances with a new baby present. I'm sure that seismic shift in your access means working from home is quite different. As an SME banker in the West Midlands, what's changed for you?
So from a personal point of view, as you say, we had a baby during lockdown, so that has been quite a dramatic change to my circumstances. But I'm fortunate enough to have an office I can shut myself away in. But at the same time, I do get the beauty of I can pop out when I get a break just to see my baby and to to watch her growing up, as most people don't get to do normally. Professionally wise, I would say that we're a lot busier than we used to be. We obviously have a number of customers all impacted one way, shape or form by COVID, some for the better, many for the worse. And it's just trying to assist them as best as we can, really, whilst also ensuring the bank sort of keeps itself safe as well. Because at the end of the day, we too are impacted, just like everyone else.
And how did you deal with the technology switch? Was that something quite easy, or are you still working on a laptop, or what's happened in your circumstances?
For me personally, it was quite a smooth transition. I managed to sort of take a few sort of screens and stuff from our office and bring them home, sort of on what I knew was going to be my last day in the office. So I've got a desk here. I've sort of set up as I normally would be in the office, really. The main challenge for me, as sort of it's been alluded to before, is just not being in the office and not having a physical presence with anyone else in the office. So you don't get that banter, or you don't get so much social interaction. Usually, if you were talking to someone, it'd be with a specific purpose. Fortunately, I think teams have coped quite well in terms of trying to communicate more, get together more, and sort of try to bring the team together more. With the whole office thing, just one other thing we have as well is we've got 2 new people who've started, 1 apprentice and 1 graduate. And for those guys, it must be a whole different experience, but for both of them, it's their first job. And they've never met any of the team so far face to face. All their learning has had to be virtual. And I just can't imagine what that must be like. It makes it a lot harder to train them as well.
Yeah, it must be surreal. I know that from other professional institutes like the accountants and lawyers and whatever, they are saying that sitting next to people and mentoring them in their job development is a loss when everyone is working from home. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I also have another instance of an organization. They have the chief executive there has set up coffee machine moments. So various leaders within the organization will be in a Zoom room that's designated as a coffee machine, and they'll hang out there, I think is the term that they use in California these days. They'll be there, and colleagues are allowed to crash in on the Zoom room for a window of time. Lauren, is anything like that happening within your organization? I know that you've been doing some fundraising, particularly as well, just off the track. What's happening informally around grapevines? Because the informal grapevines in organizations are really, really effective. Much as the leaders don't like to think so, they are hugely effective.
Yeah, definitely. As an organization, we use Workplace. So if you don't know, that's a Facebook platform that works to communicate with all of its staff. So I think it's about 80,000 of us on the platform, which is a fantastic way of us all communicating, supporting each other and asking for help. What it does also allow us to do is do broadcasts. So we're often able to meet with, our CEO, Alison Rose. We're able to meet with, for example, we've got a new CEO of personal banking. So we can meet with these people and ask them questions and have that time with them, which is really fantastic to feel really connected to what the bank's purpose is at the moment. But for myself, I'm part of an employee-led network, so the gender network. So we're here to attract, retain and develop female talent in the bank. And we were doing coffee mornings. So we're allowing our members to come in and speak with us and have that time. And that was going all across the country, in India, Poland, it was happening everywhere, which I think was a really fantastic opportunity for us to all still connect where we weren't meeting in our normal offices. And then off the back of that, where we were meeting with people across the regions that we wouldn't normally meet with, I had a conversation with the co-chair of Scotland, so I'm the co-chair of the East, and we talked about raising money for charity and said, there's some people out there that are really struggling at the moment. We know that during lockdown, domestic abuse went up. We know that during lockdown, there was a lot of women that were financially struggling, and the newspapers did the report that women were the most impacted by COVID. So we thought we've got an opportunity now to support others. And we weren't traveling into the office. We weren't paying for lunches. We were saving money. We had that extra income that we could use to support those that don't have that. So we did a big quiz. We did not expect it to go as big. We thought, oh, we'll do a little quiz. A few people will turn up. We had nearly 1,000 people turn up across over 90 teams, and raised £2,500 for the Scottish Women's Aid and also for Young Women's Trust. So that opportunity to give back to our communities was fantastic. And then locally, I know we were doing lots of great things as well. So my team, for example, we raised money to donate some goodies and snacks to the local ambulance service and the local hospitals that were really struggling during COVID. And I know that Gogarburn, obviously our big base for the NatWest group, did a food bank collection. So we've really used this opportunity where we're all struggling to really help others. So yeah, that's been a really great kind of outcome of the impact of COVID.
Yeah, the social aspect of the responsibility for professional bankers, I have to say, often gets lost in the noise. And way back at the creation of the Institute, the founding principles were about the education and professionalisation of bankers, but also recognising our responsibilities to our social economy. And in those days, it was way more local than it is nowadays. Of course, the local bank manager was in the local economy, and everyone who worked there probably knew everyone. We're all a bit more dispersed these days. Joe, do you miss those days of when things were really local? And what strengths do you think we have nowadays in this dispersed model?
Oh, do I miss it? That's a good question. Yes, I think that there's a bit of nostalgia there for the good old days, as it were. No, you're making me sound really old now, Bill.
No, not at all. I'm making myself sound old, wistfully thinking of the good old days.
I remember the old branch manager in those days and the sort of community activities that they did. So yes, it's not that long ago. I think that at the minute it feels that we have the ability and the technology to be able to do it much more dispersed and not just sort of UK centric, but globally as well. But it doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen informally. And that, going back to that coffee chat, somebody has a good idea and it kind of grows and grows and grows, and to become something now. It has to be thought through. It has to have the effort put into it, and it has to be organised. And I took part in Lauren's quiz there. It was very competitive. It was a lot of fun. But a lot of work went into that to make it work as well, and lots of workarounds to get the technology to work. So I think there's benefits in both ways, but I think we're learning a lot. I
can't believe that bankers at NatWest and RBS would be competitive. I simply refuse to believe. And I also imagine there were some fantastic quiz team names. I remember being on one years ago that was called Quiz Team Aguilera. Which I thought was a tremendous play in once, but anyway, you don't know who she is, but that doesn't matter. I'll be interested to hear what the creativity around the names was. Look, in your world, what technology have you had to learn about? I mean, Zoom's been around a while. I do a lot of business in Scandinavia and North America, and we've been using Zoom for maybe 5, 6 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. All of a sudden, Zoom became this overnight success. What have you had to learn about being remote? Because we've got a whole aspect of data protection and everything else. I'm assuming you're not just shoveling paperwork into your refuse stack every week.
No, not at all. And you're right. I mean, before lockdown, very much this sort of thing would be a video conference in a big boardroom. There was one room per office that had to be booked out and was always fully booked because board meetings needed to happen. Whereas now, we've got Zoom. We actually use Microsoft Teams quite a lot, which is a very similar thing, but it gives us the functionality to instant message as well, which is not really something we had in our organisation before, but has really, really taken off now. And I think it's one of those things where sometimes you have a query that's not quite right for a phone call, but likewise, you don't want to take up email traffic, and a quick instant message is just a very easy way to just get in touch with someone as well. And I think for us, it's been sort of adapting to using multiple ways of communicating, not just Zoom, not just email, not just phone call. You've got so many different things you can do now. And it's just trying to pull all those together to get that sort of team feel, to try and, substitute for not being face to face.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, in terms of go on.
No, it's okay. You carry on.
You're talking. One of our viewers has asked, "Does it feel like Groundhog Day?" Now, that's an unfair question for you, Luke, because you've got a new infant in the house, and that could feel like Groundhog Day. So, Joe, is it Groundhog Day for you on a Monday when it's back to the same place that you're at? What, Lauren, you think about that too. I mean, we may take a straw poll, but the question is, it feels a bit like Groundhog. How do you differentiate from being in front of a screen? Joe, what do you think?
I think you need to keep it real and be authentic. Yes, it can sometimes think, you can look at your diary and think, oh my gosh, I've got 6 hours on Zoom today. But then you hold yourself to it and think, but I don't have to go out in the rain, and I don't have sort of 3 hours commute. I'm not on sort of an early train or early traveling. And I think we're all getting better at, when the dog comes to join the Zoom, or the Amazon man knocks on the door, etc. And where you were asking before about working from home, has it changed? These things are becoming much more acceptable, and I think we would do better not to hide them. To let yourselves sort of acknowledge that real life sort of happens whilst you're working from home, and all that just adds to the little bit more informality, a little bit more sort of banter, and just getting to know each other a little bit better.
So, Lauren, I got confused because my home at one point during the big lockdown in Scotland, I think we were an Amazon hub and no one told me. So is that something that you're seeing as well?
Yes, I live on a farm, so it's actually more of a drop off the crops, drop off the machinery. It's sometimes a bit of a hub here, but I think in terms of Groundhog Day, I don't know. I haven't felt like that, but I absolutely love doing my job. I love coming into work, which is probably a little bit sad, maybe, I don't know. But I just, I don't kind of get that Monday morning blues, because I actually really enjoy getting up to come to do my job. So, but I think for anyone that does, I think one of the great things to do, and obviously I don't know individuals' diaries, but if you can maybe spend the first 10, 15 minutes of your day maybe doing a catch up. So we always have our daily Scrum in the morning. So we work in Agile, and it's a really good opportunity to invigorate what's our goals for the week, what are we going to do, what are we going to achieve. This week at the moment is I Am Remarkable week, which Google set up. And I went to a session and I felt so empowered after that. So this is what I've achieved, this is what I've done. And I've taken an action away that every week I want to start my week with what my goals are. And at the end of the week go, I'm remarkable because I've achieved this. And I think it's just the mindset. We need to change our mindset and go into every week and every day thinking, what can I do to help save the world? Because I think whatever we do in banking, we have such an impact on people, we have such an impact on the planet, we have had such an impact on our communities. I don't see how anyone can leave a day working in the office or working at home and not feel that they've really achieved something. So I think maybe it's just a change of mindset that we all need to consider.
So, Luke, for you, what works? Clearly, there are things that work for you. You're a very upbeat kind of guy. So what's working for you? And I know everyone's being honest here about what the reality of life is. What doesn't work for you might be another question.
Okay. What works for me is sort of having a point where you switch off. So for me, that is, leaving this room once I'm done, shutting down, and then you are done for the day, done for the week, whatever it may be. What also might work, it doesn't work for me just because of my situation, but for others, I would also encourage them, especially for the Groundhog Day question, is try working in another room. When we had slightly less restrictions, I worked down at my in-laws a couple of times, and I found that just so refreshing, just being somewhere else. I was still in another room, I was still in a bedroom, working exactly the same job as I am now, but it just being somewhere different was just so much more refreshing. What doesn't work is Well, you put me on the spot there, Bill.
No, I don't mean to
probably just
to do that. What clearly doesn't, anything negative doesn't work for you.
Well, pretty much, yeah. The only thing with being at home is that there is that blurred line between what's work and what's personal, and it can be quite hard to shut off for a lot of people as well. So it's just a case of trying to set some boundaries between your work and when you have some wind down time as well, because that's very important. I'm a big advocate for exercising as well. I think that's really important for people's health and well-being.
Yes. So you're right. So a healthy mind is really important. In our research, we saw that people were saying, close the laptop or shut down and walk away, and be very clear about the time you're available and the time you aren't. Now, that is not a luxury everyone has. Some people are sort of always on, as it were. One other initiative was what they call cards and calls, where leaders in the business were sending cards to people or making calls to people or being available to people. Is that happening within your places of work? Do you feel connected to those who work with you and those who lead you? Joe, you are one of the leaders in the organization. How are you going the extra mile to make sure you're connected with people who are now completely dispersed? How do you deal with that?
So I think that you've got to use multiple different opportunities and methods. So we also have a daily call at 9 o'clock, which is just the time for the whole team just to get together, go through any priorities, what we've got, anything anybody needs help with, just get a sense of what workloads are like, etc. So I think that's always a good start. But you're looking out for sort of other signals as well of what might be going on in people's lives that you can pick up and then sort of catch up with people individually or on a one-to-one basis. Workplace, which is another sort of opportunity to get together with different people and contact them. We've got coffee chats going on. We've got listening events going on. So I don't think there's one single answer, but lots of different opportunities that we can take advantage of.
And how do you make sure no one's left behind, Joe? Because I suppose the hardest thing is to make sure everyone is part of it. How do you deal with that part of it? It's quite difficult, isn't it?
It is, and I think it is picking up on those signs that so you're checking in with people, and it's not just all work focused. That you know how they're feeling, and when there's other things going on in their lives that might be impacting, which you would just see in the office because you're around people, but you don't when it's limited to a 15-minute call. So checking in with people on a very regular basis and having that chat around what else is going on in their lives as well.
So, look, coming back to you, what do you now associate with the pandemic? If you were to be sitting a psychometric test right now, what phrases and words, and I'm not doing a President Trump type test here, or is he president? I don't know, let's not go there. He technically is. So what words and phrases do you associate? And for both you, Lauren, and Joe, consider that question. You've got a bit more thinking time. But I know that Luke is sleep deprived and is going to be as honest as he's ever been because he can't think straight.
For me, so it's I'm trying to think of single words here.
Words or phrases. Words or phrases.
So obviously, sort of housebound is probably quite a good one. Distant, maybe. I think we can feel a bit distant from our family and friends at the moment, in particular. As I say, that's certainly been my biggest challenge. Whilst it's been great having a baby, she's not been able to see our wider family so much. So that's been particularly difficult for us on a personal level. What's that? I think very sort of adaptable. I think what surprised me is how adaptable a lot of us have been, and everyone still has their challenges. But I do think we've all been very resilient. And even during the second lockdown, I think, especially knowing there's an end date, I think people have just been sort of getting on with it and just saying, we'll just get this out of the way, and fingers crossed things will be better on the other end of it. So
from the Institute staff, the permanent staff with the the Institute have not really been in Drumshoe in Edinburgh or London office for a long time. And the business end of the equation at the Institute flipped to being a digital organisation. It had been in a transition towards the digital for quite a number of years. For me, Simon Thompson, Giles and others, the fact that they've been able to institute globally, where we still have exams going on, whilst people are sitting them at home being invigilated properly. Lauren, the agility you talked about is the way that your team is managed, but from your perspective, sitting on the farm there, what phrases or words come to mind to you for the pandemic?
I think Zoom fatigue is definitely the one of the year. I think, Joe, you already touched on it, but you can have days where you've got 6-7 hours where you are solidly on Zoom. I know Alison Rose, as part of her commitment for the second lockdown, said, take your hour, go outside, take your lunch break. Because we all do it. I did it before even this happened. I was in the office, I would go get my lunch, and I'd sometimes just sit at my desk and do work while I'm eating my lunch. I think it's really important that we actually do say to people, no, I'm really sorry, I can't do a Zoom call at that time. Can we schedule it for another time, because I need to take my hour away from my computer before we all get square eyes. I think that's really important. And you can feel really tired. You can spend all day sat doing absolutely nothing and actually feel more tired than if you'd have gone to the gym for an hour and, run on the treadmill or something. So I'm definitely taking my time to appreciate having that hour. So yesterday, for example, I went out and spent time with my horses for an hour and, walked outside, went for a walk around the farm. So that's really important. Now, I know I'm incredibly privileged to be able to do that. I know there's a lot of people that I have colleagues that work in flats and don't have gardens. So I'm not kind of questioning my privilege there. I know I'm incredibly lucky to have an experience like that. So for me, Zoom fatigue is a big one. And I think whether you're in a flat, on a farm, I don't know, on a beach somewhere, take that opportunity to step away from your computer and take some time for yourself. I think that's really important.
Joe, the point there about taking time for yourself, you've been guiding people to do that for years, I suspect, because it's a really important part of being physically and mentally capable of doing things. You and I probably have seen really talented bankers burn out over long periods or shorter periods of time, when in fact it's been about all on as opposed to being everything else. I should disclose, I'm standing at the moment. I have a standing desk, something Scandinavian clients of mine have been using for years. There's a desk that goes up and down, and I choose for a part of my day to stand because I found that the sitting on video conference calls and everything else is quite difficult most of the day. So if I walk away or I walk forwards, it's not because I'm sitting on a chair. It's and I have to say, it's I was a bit skeptical, but I know some organisations now in Denmark, this is legislative. They have to provide these kind of desks for people. So Joe, it's not always easy though to walk away from the desk, is it?
No, it's not. But I think where I've seen the change is in the role modelling, where I've heard terms in the past that lunches for wimps, for example, and yep. There was a long hours culture, and I worked abroad for a little while as well, and the hours that were worked were just incredible, but that was seen as a sign of strength at the time. And there's been a huge cultural shift which I think has massively accelerated, and we're not just talking about well-being now. I think people are really demonstrating how important it is, and not just at 5 o'clock when the working day ends, but during sort of the working hours as well. You need to get up, walk around, and you would get that naturally just walking to and from the office or going to get a coffee or what have you. It's not that far to the kitchen, so you have to sort of make more of an effort to do that during the working day. But also homeschooling. That's one of the things we haven't mentioned. My kids that are grown up, actually one of them is a teacher, which is ironic. But again, how much harder is it for people that are juggling work and looking after children and trying to teach them as well?
Yeah, we'll come on to that general point around generations. I've got one student who's been here and not at university now for quite a number of months, and just getting on with it. And and I do. All the economic studies point to the sort of 14 to 24 age group being materially impacted, and we should be concerned about that, because those are formative years that can impact right through life. There is a sort of tongue-in-cheek question that's come in from Anonymous, so I'm always slightly concerned about anonymous questions. It's about etiquette for Zoom and Teams calls. If you're on Zoom and Teams calls with your colleagues, should your video be on or off? Luke.
I would say, as a general rule of thumb, I prefer having it on. I prefer seeing people. I prefer people seeing me. There are exceptions. I think we've had, usually if you've got sort of a big sort of broadcast like webinar, or some sort of teaching out to a whole load of people, I don't think there's a need for that. So I think by all means have your video off if needs be. But I think if you're having a conversation where you will be sort of engaging with other people, and likewise people engaging with you, I think it's just nice to have your video on. People, as much as you want to see other people want to see you, and that's how you can get as close to face as possible, really.
Yeah, it's a tongue-in-cheek question. I suspect it's one of the executives at the Institute just asking me whether the trustee board meeting in a few weeks' time should be videos on or off, just so they don't have to wear a shirt and a jacket.
I think we've got a lot more comfortable with it. I think we've got more at the beginning. I think we felt quite self-conscious, sort of seeing yourself on camera, but it's become just the way things are now. So I don't give it a second thought, but I do accept that the first few times you do it, perhaps just feel a little bit uncomfortable. So I think whatever people feel comfortable with, and hopefully in time they feel happy to switch their cameras on.
And if you don't already know, on Zoom, there's an option to touch up your appearance. So for anyone on that board meeting, just switch that on.
Lauren, thank you for that piece of styling advice. The sad fact is that the amount of touching up that would have to be done is out with the scope of Zoom, given that you haven't seen the mugshots of the trustees. And I say that, hand on heart, they are the sweetest people on the planet. But there are some of them, my colleagues, that would need a lot of work, myself included. So thank you for that. I'm sure they're all now asking someone who's considerably younger, how do I do that? The other aspect, I suppose, that we have around this whole lockdown is this generational point that you touched on, Joe. The impact on schooling, which clearly can't be equitable, because some kids will be taught better at home, some can't, some won't have broadband, some may not have access. So we are going to have a disproportionality and a gap developing in that age group. And we know in the formative years of education that the impact on future lives can be material. So that's a significant point for society as a whole to deal with. As you've led people through the leadership maze, Joe, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing them? And did you ever have a role model or a mentor that got you over a particular challenge? Because I'm really interested in the import of mentors and role models, because we have that within our 2025 foundation. So just interested in your journey of that point.
Yeah. So I think it's accessibility is the big challenge, and the difference between having the right equipment and being able to access it, and fast broadband and Wi-Fi, compared to some families where you might have shared resources, shared computers, and not necessarily even Wi-Fi. The disadvantages that causes, I think, cannot be underestimated. And if we're going to address something going forward, both in schools and working from home as well, or sort of teaching from home, that has to be something that we're able to combat. Mentors is an interesting one. I think it comes in and out of favor almost. There seems to be a real thirst and sort of and curiosity about the benefits of mentoring and reverse mentoring. And then it almost goes out of fashion, or it goes quiet for a little while, then people realize the benefits of it. And certainly we've seen it a lot within our organization, and more so this year as well, through the diversity and inclusion agenda that we've seen, where we can sort of really harness the benefits of it. But I still think we're finding the best way for that. And I might think on the question about when I've had a mentor that's really helped me through, if that's okay.
Yeah, please. Look, from your perspective, in your career, do you have a buddy system at all where you've got people paired up, or do you have mentors attributed, or is it something that you're interested in?
Yeah, very interested. And I think where we've worked with the institutes, also having people that you can work with externally, that's one of the benefits of the membership forum, is that we're not just colleagues sort of working for different financial institutions, we've actually become friends through the process as well. And we've met up informally through coffee chats and be able to learn about how we approach different things. So I think that peer-to-peer, as well as sort of formal mentoring, has worked really well.
I wonder if I hear a small child in the background.
I
think,
yeah, potentially.
Yeah, great. That's life. So look from your perspective, what would you hope to get help with over the course of the next phase of your career?
I guess I'd probably quite appreciate advice over sort of, where my career could take me. I'm generally a fairly open-minded kind of person. Whilst I have sort of a direction I'm looking to go, that's not to say that's the only way, because in many ways I think sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and I think there's definitely an advantage to being open to all areas of the bank. I've listened to senior managers' sort of career paths multiple times before, and it's always been around sort of what I'd describe as like a zigzag pattern. So you don't just move up in a straight line, you go and do other things, you go for work different, and it sort of makes you a much more all-rounded sort of person. So for me, yeah, I'd really like good guidance on, where could I go? And I did recently actually have a good exercise with my manager on sort of where my skills lie, which of those skills motivate and drain me, and almost using that as a tool to identify, what sort of roles would be good to move into, which was really, really powerful.
And do you think the role of a mentor should be organization specific, or do you think it should be wider? Because from an institute perspective, we've got a whole bunch of people who may work for a different organization that may ultimately be a competitor. But we're all bankers and professional bankers at the end of the day. Do you see that never the twain shall meet, or do you think that's something we should be cultivating more of?
No, I think 100% a mentor doesn't have to be from the same organization or even necessarily from the same industry. I think someone else will have a completely different viewpoint on yourself, and it might well take that outside voice to give a different perspective on things. Sorry, but I didn't quite catch the second part of your question.
When you're talking to the, so it's just whether never the twain shall meet, but you've said where people are from, give you value and give you good advice, I suppose it's fine.
Absolutely.
Lauren, if you're out with the horse, what are you telling the horse that you can't tell your colleagues?
Usually we're having an argument about something different rather than work related things. So yeah, I don't tend to have an issue in the working front with the horse. So yeah.
And from a sort of mentor role model aspect for you, as someone who's focused on where you're going, how have you been helped by those around you? I think mentors have been incredibly crucial to my career. I've only been in banking 5 years, so I can't say I've got a wealth of experience, and I think recognizing and reflecting on that's really important. I've had
mentors from outside of the bank. I've had mentors inside of the bank, and they've all given me lots of different opportunities to reflect. I think what's important to remember with a mentor is they're not necessarily have to be a long-term relationship. You could have a mentor for a year, you could have a mentor for 6 months. It depends on what stage you're at and the kind of experience and knowledge that they can give you that might support you. One thing that's really important in the bank is making us T-shaped. So I know that my SME is in mortgages, but I want to be more T-shaped. I want to develop all my project skills. So it's always looking for the right mentor at the time to support the skills that I'm looking for. And I always say challenge yourself. Every year, give yourself a challenge. So last year, my big challenge was Young Banker of the Year. And years before, I've done a challenge kind of every year since to develop skills I've never had before, to give me opportunities that I've never done. And that's always been really important to me. And I always encourage others, especially when I hear other women that are really nervous about putting themselves out there, I try to encourage everyone to take that step, do something that puts you outside of your comfort zone, because you'll never know. And mentors is one of those things, reaching out to someone that may be quite senior to you and saying, I'd really love your expertise, I'd really like to get some time with you, although it could be quite daunting, could actually end up being one of the most important and career defining moments for yourself.
And I think that point, and Joe and I will relate to it, given that we're further down the career path, is that we were there previously, and asking our older colleagues way back in the day was just as daunting to us as no doubt it is. And it shouldn't be, because you'll find that, well, unless they're really strange, they will happily give advice. I'm pretty sure that's the case. If you find someone who doesn't want to be cooperative, I'd have concerns. There's another tongue-in-cheek question that I have to ask the three guests today. Should the incumbent president of the Chartered Banking Institute wear a tie when interviewing members? So if you give me if it's a no, give me a thumbs up. So the sartorial elegance, apparently there will be old past presidents burling in their graves at the thought of a president not wearing a tie. Frankly, I hadn't thought of it. But that question came from the chief executive, actually. And I think he's looking for a free pass never to wear a tie again. So Simon, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I don't feel undressed or anything else. Luke, how did you arrive in banking? I'm interested in, you're there now and you're establishing, you're an SME banker in the West Midlands and you're on your pathway, but how did you get there? How did it start?
In a weird way, I actually almost stumbled across it. I started just as a summer job in a retail branch as a cashier, and then that was based in the East Midlands, and then we were moving to Birmingham, my then partner and I, and then actually handed in my notice, and during that notice period a job came up in the business and private banking team based in Birmingham. So it sounded like an interesting role. It was working as a sort of business manager for one of the senior managers for the regional directors. So I didn't have anything lined up specifically, so I thought I'd just go for it. And it ended up being a job that was very much out of my comfort zone naturally, but again, I spent sort of 2.5 years working with him. He was an excellent mentor, extremely patient, and willing to help me develop as well. And that then sparked my interest in a career in corporate banking, which is where I then moved on to at Clydesdale Bank before now moving to Santander. So that's a very quick whistle stop.
It's quite a journey. Yeah, Joe, how did you arrive in banking? Was it haphazard as well?
So I joined from leaving school, and it was a decision then between, do I go to university or do I join the bank? And I got offered what I felt was a really good opportunity at time of really high unemployment as well, back in the 80s. And I've been here ever since. So that's my route in. But having said that, although I've been in the same organisation many years, I've had many, many different roles as well. And I think that's partly the reason why I've stayed here so long, because there's so many opportunities working in banking to get involved in so many things.
Yeah, when you have a large organization that affords multiple opportunities, it's as good as moving around from organization to organization, I suspect. Lauren, you strike me as someone who plans everything in advance. Now, you may not be, but that you give a view that you have. I'm assuming that when you were in year 11 or something, you were planning a career in banking, yeah?
I'd love to say I was. No. I can't say I made good choices when I was younger. I thought I was going to work in the arts. I thought I was going to be a theatre director. As you can see, obviously very theatrical, but that was not the path for me. I went and did my degree in it. I did English literature and contemporary performance. And I left university. I was like, right, I'm going to get a job at Channel 4 or the BBC, and or I'm going to go work in the West End or something. And it didn't quite work out like that, unfortunately. Although I say unfortunately, actually, I'm really pleased with where my career is now. So I'd probably take that back. But I spent a year doing my job in a restaurant, applying for every job that I possibly could, every grad scheme, and not being successful. And a year after I graduated, I applied for a customer contact role at Royal Bank of Scotland, as it was then. And I thought, right, fine, I'll do that. And I'm going to do that for a bit, and I'm going to become a police officer. So I started as a special constable, and I volunteered a lot of my time doing that. And after being spat in the face by someone, you kind of realise that policing may not be the job for you. So I kind of put my heart and soul into being in banking. I thought, right, I'll do this for some time until I know what I want to do. And interestingly, I was offered the opportunity to be the first person in mortgages to do the Chartered Banker's certificate. And I went, oh, okay, fine. And I loved it. And I realised at that point in time that I was going to be a banker. And I've been a banker since, and I absolutely love it. And I think what we do is fantastic. And I just, yeah, I can't wait for the next few years of my career, definitely.
So what we've discovered is that the CVs that we all put together and the resumes, and they're all carefully crafted. It's basically just a lot of random happenings that we stitch together to make sound as though we really planned everything. And I'm no different. I have exactly the same. I'm a failed opera singer. So I have exactly the same haphazard arrival. And I'm now doing a job that as a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old schoolboy, I wouldn't have been able to describe, never mind aspire to do it. So for all three of you, contemplate this question that's come in, is how important is the wider being a professional banker and being associated with the Chartered Banker Institute to you? Is it important? And be honest, I'm not here looking for false positives. What can we do better if it's not good enough? And how can we make it seem more relevant to you? So I think, Luke, do you want to go first in terms of how do you feel about the connectedness of our worldwide institute with 29,999 other people next to you?
I think there's always room for improvement. I think certainly that there's definitely, I've seen a lot more recently about how globally connected we are. I think it'd be nice to see more of that and what that could do for maybe members in the different countries and linking up together. For me, being part of the chartered bank community, being a chartered banker is very important from my customers' point of view. They know when they're dealing with me, they're dealing with someone who is, subject to, the chartered bankers standards, and, someone who is going to treat them fairly. And they've just got that sort of comfort that they're dealing with a banking professional.
Yeah, so there's room for improvement. And I know that the executive watching this will be taking notes as we've emerged to become a digital organization just beyond the UK. Joe, from your perspective, the older institute, which was very UK centric, et cetera, what does being connected to the institute mean to you? Because you've been one of our biggest advocates of bringing people through the system.
I think it helps us recognise that the role that we do, the job that we have, is also a profession as well. And it's hugely important to how the world runs, how the sort of finance sort of affects so many sort of parts of our society. And I think that the insights that I get through the Institute, where I'd have to go searching for them quite deep, is one of the big benefits about what is happening in the sort of global financial world as well, and how that sort of part of that plays. But it's certainly recognising it as a profession, as we would sort of automatically consider other professions that we perhaps don't think of that as bankers. Yeah, and you know, hugely important is that opportunity to offer the professional development that's supported through the Institute, to help our colleagues become qualified, and to Luke's point, to give the customers the confidence as well.
So Lauren, as someone who's actively engaged with the Institute, what's your thoughts on that? Then I'm going to come back on a sort of light-hearted question, talk about books. So just think about books tangentially. But Lauren, the Institute, what does that mean for you? I know that you are heart and soul in your organisation, but the Institute is something quite different.
Yeah, I think what's great about the Institute is the opportunity to be part of that membership forum, which is obviously why the three of us are here today, because we're actually able to support and shape what the Institute looks like for our members. And I think that's really important. I don't think there's many institutes that always go out to their members and understand what's important to them, especially when we're kind of embedded within that kind of, you can become very organisation centric. I think what's important is bringing up all the different knowledge, experience, thoughts into that community, and feeding it back to yourselves. And I've seen a huge change only in the last 4 or 5 years that I've been a member. I've seen shifts in the qualifications that are coming out, like the Green Finance Certificate. I think is fantastic. It's 100% where banking's going. We know that that's something banks need to be doing, and aligning to that, I think, is really important. And I kind of live and breathe your values in what I do in my day job, and the Institute itself has given me so many opportunities that I love to be able to give back and support where I can as well.
So the sort of humbling thing for me, knowing that you're the 61st in a line of some august bankers who've gone well before, but I was taken right back to a certificate that hangs on the wall outside Simon Thompson's office. And it's an admission certificate to, I think, candidate number 4 of the Institute, going way back to the late 1800s. And that person was being elevated in their education to become a professional banker. And when I read through with Matthew, who does a lot of the clever writing stuff around the Institute, we looked at what previous presidents had said. And the reality is that nothing much changes. We have famines, we have pandemics, we have war, we have every single thing that goes through the line of humanity's history. Yet the Institute remains. And the most humbling thing for me was to know that I'm 61 in the line, and next June, number 62 will step up and I will have done my bit. And beyond that, you could be looking at number 63, 4, 5, and beyond, that the Institute is a constant. But it has evolved, but retained its core messages of professionalization of banking with a social interaction and a social responsibility. There is a question about the books behind your heads, both Joe and Luke. And Lauren, one of the viewers is interested, what have you read during lockdown? And I mean anything that's completely non-banking or whatever. So Joe, what have you been, what's on your bedside table? What are you reading at the moment? Or are you a podcaster, or what is it?
So I've discovered an app called BorrowBox during lockdown, which is a digital library that's linked to my local library, which I find quite endearing. And it means you can borrow books as you would physical books, but you can read them on the app. So some of my books, I read American Dirt for Jean Cummings earlier in the year, which was sort of regards an exodus out of South America and the cartels and into the USA. It was, a very, very interesting book, really opened my eyes a lot. I've also read The Fitness Chef, which given a focus on well-being and sort of thinking about how do we keep fit and not raid the fridge every time we get a few minutes is something. And the one that I'm reading at the minute is called Invisible Women, which is, again, is a very powerful book. Pop's a little bit controversial about gender data exposing gender bias. So hugely interesting. Lauren, you've maybe read that as well.
Well, I've read that one, and it's staggering that the design world is driven by the average size of a male. You know, seat belts and all of that stuff. The data that's in there is quite staggering. When 51% of the population isn't that way. Luke, what are you reading apart from how to be an excellent father and get some sleep?
I was going to say the only books I'm doing are baby books at the moment. I am a bit guilty. I don't tend to read physical books too much. My idea of winding down is sort of listening to some music and watching a bit of TV, and yeah. Otherwise, I'm a bit guilty in that I don't tend to read. A lot of these are my wife's books. They just make me look a bit smarter.
Lauren, what are you reading at the moment?
Well, I've recently set up some lean-in circles within the bank. So I've been reading Sheryl Sandberg's Lean-In, which has been fascinating. So recommend that, but definitely the Invisible Woman book. I went to see her live just before lockdown in February to hear her talk about it, and it was fascinating. So if anyone hasn't read it, 100% recommend it. It will really open your eyes to what's happening, definitely.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Required reading for me every fortnight is Private Eye, and it reminds me why I would never want to be a politician. And I take it simply for that point. I've got a pile of other things, but I only ever seem to reread the same 2 pages most evenings. That's probably just indicative of a clear conscience and being overtired. We have come to the end of our allotted time. So on behalf of everyone who's watching now or watching in catch up, can I thank all 3 of you for being fulsome and great with us in terms of how you've dealt with lockdown, what you think of dealing with colleagues in crisis, how to lead through a pandemic, and how to be part of an effective organization. It's been really helpful, I'm sure, for many of our members tuning in. So on behalf of all of them, to each of the 3 of you, thank you very much indeed. To those of you watching, we will repeat this with a new group of people in due course. So my thanks to Heather Marsh at the Institute for making all the magic happen. We just turned up and had a chat, and that was the whole point. Heather, thank you. I know you're lurking there in the background off camera, I note. So thank you very much indeed for everything that you've done. From all of us at the Chartered Banker Institute, wherever you are in the world, stay well, look after each other, and I look forward to speaking with as many of you as possible again soon. Thank you and good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.